Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to Read Becca for another weekly chatty catch-up on everything I read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading for roughly the current week, and some general chit-chat. So let's dive into the books that I read this week. First up is The City in the Middle of the Night by Charlie Jane Anders. This has been a long ongoing read. I had it on my TBR list last year for Trans Girl April, and then I started it this year for Trans Girl April, and I'm just now finishing it. So I guess it counts for Pride as well, and also probably Big Book Summer, because this is right under 500 pages, though it doesn't look too huge. But this is a beautiful copy. I love this physical book. I unfortunately didn't love the actual book, which is a disappointment. I think that's why I didn't love it, is because this was such a letdown after really adoring All the Birds in the Sky, Anders' first book. And the author, in the beginning of the acknowledgments, starts by saying, writing this book felt like stumbling around in total darkness a lot of the time. And I felt that as a reader. That definitely describes the reading experience here. So ostensibly, everything about the general summary that you hear for this is completely accurate. And so this is science fiction. It's in a far future where humans have colonized another planet that is very, from a weather standpoint, I guess, very limited where it is habitable. And so there, on this planet, are only a couple of places to live, and these very stratified society, I would say, is what I picked up on. We are following two girls. Bianca and Sophie are kind of the main characters, though we do only get Sophie's perspective of the two of them, and then another outside perspective known as Mouth. And I never really understood why we got Mouth's perspective. I kind of wish we had Sophie and Bianca's perspective, because they are very different individuals. And what is so different about them is that in this extremely stratified society, we have kind of the city dwellers and the farm dwellers. And the city dwellers clearly have everything, have a trajectory that things are provided for them. They're going to go to this university called the Gymnasium, and that is where Sophie and Bianca met, is at the Gymnasium. But Sophie is from outside. She's from the farmlands, and the farmlands, your course is set out for you, but that course is you are going to be a farmer forever. You're going to reproduce to keep farming going. And so it is a very regimented role. But she somehow has come out of that and is in the Gymnasium, which is more or less just a university. There's nothing insidious or weird about the Gymnasium. It's just a university. But their perspectives are so different, clearly, and Bianca doesn't take seriously or doesn't have an awareness of her privilege in everything that she has. And Sophie is constantly noticing this with the people around her at the Gymnasium. And so Sophie is definitely an outsider in that space. So a lot of this that I've been talking about is really inferred and not built out as world building very clearly. So these are little moments briefly that I've added all together into this is what the world makes sense as for me. So over the course of this, definitely both girls become involved with kind of a resistance movement, and I think that's the main plot that I would try to get across to you, but so little of that is understandable to me. We understand that they're part of this sort of resistance. We understand that there is this very stratified society, but I never figured out who they're resisting, really. What is the actual system structure? I don't know. So I feel like I missed something huge, or it's just not fleshed out here. I also feel that we are told constantly what a close relationship these two girls, Bianca and Sophie, have, not Mouth. I'm probably not even going to talk about Mouth's perspective for the rest of this, because I just don't understand why it was there. So Bianca and Sophie are supposed to be very close, but we never see that close relationship. And Sophie is very enamored with Bianca, to the point I think that could be implying a romantic relationship, though it never actually turns to that. So it might be like a sapphic yearning situation. But other than that very unrequited, one-sided thing, we don't see them have a close relationship, or really any relationship at all on the pages. They interact a lot, yes, but they don't really have any conversations other than about what is actively happening to them right at the moment. And so that was strange. Yeah, I just had a hard time connecting with this. And there were whole sections through this where I was reading along and I could completely understand what was going on the pages, what the scenes were telling me, but I had no idea what the story of this book was. And it's not that this was weird or surreal. This was very easy to read and understand what was happening in the words on the page, but it just didn't really come together. And the world building as well, kind of to what I said, felt very not fleshed out. So this was really like stumbling in the dark a lot of the time. But there was so much behind that to the ideas that I loved. I think from a world building standpoint, there was so much cool stuff there. So if you can get into this for pure vibes, like if you read the beginning of this and you enjoy the vibe you're feeling, you may enjoy this. If you would like some hints or ideas, the seeds of world building that aren't really fleshed out, that are just really cool, you might like this. But if you're looking for fully formed characters or world building, it's not really here. If you're looking for plot or character driven storytelling, it's not really here. And so that was the letdown. I think the last 100 pages were pretty strong. That's where most of the actual fleshing out of world building did happen. And some of the coolest stuff finally happened, but it didn't come together for me really at all in the end. In those last 100 pages, I kind of understood the point, I guess, but I feel like probably at least 200 plus pages could have been cut out of this and made the points much more effectively, plus some world building. So yeah, this just wasn't very effective for me, and I don't regret reading it, but it was a real letdown after having loved Andrew's first book so much, unfortunately. So then I read a very delightful, adorable Big Panda and Tiny Dragon by James Norbury. So this was a lockdown project for the author. This is kind of an art book. I've seen this and it obviously has caught my eye because this is adorable and very beautiful art. It's a collection of kind of Buddhist maxims featuring this tiny dragon and Big Panda in all of them. Things like, which is more important, asked Big Panda, the journey or the destination? The company, said Tiny Dragon. They're more or less just single page, single panel comics with some have text, some do not. But it's adorable. There's not really a story to it, but it is collected by seasons. So there is somewhat of a progression through this. And I did enjoy it. It's very peaceful feeling and calming to read, and the art is beautiful. So I loved that. It was very easy to read through in a short period of time. I think this only took about a half an hour to read through. And so I was glad I picked it up finally after seeing it a whole bunch and having my eye on it. So yeah, very beautiful little one with not too memorable of content, but I liked it. Then on audio, I read Murder Most Royal by S.J. Bennett, the third in the Her Royal Majesty Investigates series. And I had mentioned, I think last time, that the fourth book was about to come out. And it is already out in the UK, but we have to wait until August for it in the US, which is a bummer. And the fifth book is already lined up in the UK, coming out about the same time. So I'm so disappointed that we're well behind, because I am ready to dive right in to the next book, because this was so fun. So this whole series follows the Queen as a royal sleuth, basically. And in this particular mystery, I don't want to go too far into plot, but at the onset, a hand washes up on the beach that has clearly been cut off, and it is wearing a ring, a very distinctive signet ring. So that tells us that it's a member of the peerage, and the Queen knows who this is pretty much right off. And so this one is interesting because it has that whole dynamic of, well, we found a hand. Is there a body, or is this maybe a ransom situation because they're a member of the peerage? That complicates things. And so a large portion of this book is just trying to answer that question. And of course, as is true in most of these amateur sleuth type situations where our primary character is an amateur, though I don't know if the Queen counts as an amateur at anything. As with those types of stories, the cops are not quite bumbling, but they're not progressing as well as they should, and they're doing things wrong a lot, where the Queen, of course, is just much wiser and knows better, really. So it has that delightful sense that you get kind of in a lot of cozy mysteries. So this verges there. I would also say this had a great element of biblioserendipity for me. That's a term I got from Lindy, from Lindy's Magpie Reads, of when you have a confluence of coincidences overlapping and interconnecting in your reading or what you're doing in your life, where I just happen to have started Great British Menu on season 5 specifically, because that was the earliest season available to me, and very much enjoyed it, so I will say that. But that particular season focuses on the idea of the Prince of Wales at the time, who is apparently a champion very much for local and sustainable produce. And as a result, the format of the show is that the chefs had to take an assigned historic estate and source their produce either from or very local to the estate. As the prince was sort of the guest of honor for their banquet, they wanted to showcase the locally produced items and heritage breeds. And so I didn't know any of that before watching the show, and that plays significantly into the story that's being told to us, or elements of the story. There's a lot about the historic estates. There's a lot about the prince's championing of these sort of heritage breeds, and environmental concerns come up throughout. The queen even has a conversation with a younger member of the family about the fact that their generation is kind of being left holding the bag with bad environmental situation and climate change. And so this series certainly is quite modern in those sort of conversations that it's having throughout all 3 of the books, I would say. So if you're expecting stodgy queen, this is not that. It definitely is much more modernized in her ideas, and attempts to give her a very whip smart and keeping up to date sort of mindset and perspective. We do also get some politics in there. It avoids mentioning the president of the time, because this is set a couple of years ago. Time has slowed with these books, where they have stayed compressed around 2016, 2017-ish. And so I think this is in 2017, it seemed like. And so there are mentions of the chaos going on at that time, both in the US and in the UK following Brexit, but not heavily. This doesn't get into politics a lot, other than to tie that chaos to the things that are going on with this investigation. What I also really loved about this is that the queen finally does some sleuthing, where she is actually sort of questioning some people. And we haven't really seen that, as far as I recall, previously. She used all her kind of attachés and personal assistants as her hands and feet in doing the investigations, and would sort of direct them about and lead people in conversation the way that she wanted to go. But here she's actually questioning some people, showing up with the intent to have some serious questions answered. And so I really enjoyed that. The queen's whole tone is great. And obviously it's not a realistic version of the queen, I'm sure, but she is just a delightful, whip-smart old lady depicted in this story. And I have enjoyed spending time with her, for sure. And as I said, like, I've really enjoyed the things I've learned or picked up through this, as well as Great British Menu, about the historic estates, and just how much the monarchy, while I'm not pro-royalist at all, how much the monarchy does put into supporting the local farmers, and really what they are doing to bolster their local communities. That I feel a lot of what we do in the US should be directed more similarly, and is not. A lot of things we've done have been large scale and misguided. So I don't think that was really a huge element of this, but it was certainly major backdrop to the story. So what else to say? Oh, one other thing about this that I picked up on was that a side character specifically discussed having ME/CFS, and that's something that I have heard about a lot from our very own Sue Jackson, who is hosting the Big Book Summer right now, because she also suffers from ME/CFS. So that was really interesting to see pop up in a book, because it's kind of uncommonly talked about and a real struggle for people. And so this side character specifically discusses the challenges that she faces as a result of having this disorder, and the kind of challenges that are preventing her from participating as much as she would like in things. And I really liked seeing that representation here. So this was a delight. It was a really fun time, and just very lightweight, easy to read. And I did listen to it on audio as well. The audio narrator throughout the series has been fantastic. So highly enjoyable. And that is everything I read this week. So looking forward to the coming week. I do have one book still that has been paused for maybe a month that I could pick up, but I kind of think I'm just gonna lean into fluffy romance reading. So I have already started The Sitcom Star by Jackie Lau as my next read, and that is probably where my focus will be though it's really up in the air. Clearly that is not going to take me an entire week, so I'll probably read a lot of other things. But my decks are cleared right now, so the world is my oyster in reading for the moment. As far as the watching, I already talked a little bit about Great British Menu. So as I mentioned, I have watched all of season 5 and I have not moved on to start anything else yet. It is that show I really enjoyed. I had never heard of it before in the US and noticed it was on Prime. That's one that I guess doesn't really get very much popularity, but I liked it a lot. The structure is kind of convoluted though. It's 5 episodes blocks with 3 chefs from a region competing for those 5 episodes. And by the end of the 5, they have knocked it down to 1 by them cooking their 4-course menu. And then you move to the next region with 3 chefs and 5 episodes to knock them down to 1 with their 4-course menus. And then all of the winners from each region compete against each other to narrow it down to the 4 people who are actually going to cook the 4 courses of the final menu at a big banquet. And so it's convoluted and it feels very repetitive as a result of that, but I had a very good time with it. Prue Leith is also one of the judges, so I didn't know that she came kind of from this to Bake Off, but I love Prue, of course, and she is a delight on this show. So that was very fun to watch. And I spent a ridiculous amount of time binging it last week because I made it through 45 episodes in basically a week and a half. Ridiculous. I also did watch a movie this week. I watched Fiesta en la Madriguera. That's going to be totally wrong, but it is a Mexican show that was adapted from a book that just went out on Netflix, I think this past week. I could be wrong about that, but very recently. And the American title is not quite as fitting. So the Spanish makes a lot more sense. The American title is Down the Rabbit Hole. So this was a great movie. I really enjoyed it, but it's not my normal sort of thing at all. I just knew it had been adapted from a book and decided to give it a try. The trailer, or I guess the poster, makes it look a lot more whimsical than it is, but it is whimsical. However, it's completely grounded in reality. So I will say the whimsy is mostly in the cinematography, not the storytelling. Or it is also in the storytelling, but it's not fantasy. There's no fantasy to it. So we are following a young boy as he is discovering that his father is a Mexican cartel leader. And that's the story. So everything about that sounds really gritty and dark, but what we're actually seeing play out is through the child's eye lens of him living this really kind of wondrous life where he is isolated. He's the only child in this mansion compound, effectively. They have a zoo. He gets kind of everything he wants. He's really quirky and enjoys hats a lot. And everything about the cinematography makes everything appear very rich and lush and beautiful and just a little bit overly colorful and saturated. And so it does feel fantastical surrounding him. He lives in this world of wonder and he feels a lot of love from everyone around him, but he's also super isolated. He doesn't interact with other kids. He doesn't go to school. He never leaves this mansion compound. And because he's a child and that's all he's known, like this is completely normal to him and he doesn't have an understanding of how abnormal this is. And he also feels a lot of love from his father. So we are seeing this portrayal of a man who has a lot of biases about macho behavior and culture and a lot of sharp edges, but we see soft sides to him interacting with his son and this loving relationship that he has while also being a really horrible, terrible person who literally murders people. And while that could have gone like really gritty and harsh, as this boy is finding out, like that's the summary of the movie. So I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying that the boy finds out. So as that's being uncovered, there are increasingly kind of gruesome things happening. So if you're sensitive to that, I would say there is violence, but it's implied and basically all off screen. Same deal for me, like them having a zoo and what we're seeing there. There wasn't really any animal cruelty being depicted significantly, but just my internal knowledge of that being really bad for the animals was hard for me. And there's a lot of taxidermy as well. It's odd. This kind of reminded me of early Wes Anderson when he was still quite grounded in reality with a little touch of stylized cinematography and just the way things looked was whimsical without actually injecting the over-the-top whimsy that we often get in Wes Anderson films now. So it had a touch of that. So I very much enjoyed it. So onward to life. I don't really have very much to talk about there. Just incredibly busy lately. So nothing really to talk about of interest there. We are fully headed into summer for sure this week. I think I'm looking at most of the coming week being upper 90s Fahrenheit. So truly, that's definitely summer, which is great because I'm still struggling to get over spring allergies. I'm amazed I made it through this video so far without any sneezing attacks, because that has been happening. I've been constantly stuffy. So I'm hoping maybe we will not get all of the things at once and I will be over the allergies next week, or not, or we can have all of the seasons. So I think that's it. Other than recommendations, I have 2 recommendations that I remember. Number 1 is from the channel Religion for Breakfast, which is generally a researched religious history essays type channel. So I wouldn't normally cover things from there here, except that this has a Bookish tie-in. They did a video on the Amish. And again, odd to have a Bookish tie in there, but they specifically talked about the phenomenon of Amish romances and who is reading them. And I found that really fascinating. It was a very, very interesting topic to uncover. I haven't read a ton of Amish romances. I've read some, but not recently. And the whole idea of that and the popularity of that is definitely an intriguing topic. So that's one. The second is Infinite Text, who is a booktuber that was on hiatus for quite a while. And I believe, I can't remember, some sort of specialty librarian is what her job is. Maybe an antiquarian librarian. That sounds too rhymey, so it's probably not right. But she has consistently done really well-researched videos on focused topics a lot of the time. And on her recent return has had a slew of those. So I specifically want to highlight her discussion of books that you should read if you like fun with words. And really, you should just check out her channel if you're not aware, since she has, as I said, just returned from a long hiatus and you weren't following her before, or you were following her before and weren't aware she's back. Definitely jump on Infinite Text, because absolutely stellar, top-notch content for sure. So I think that is all for me for this week, and I hope you have a wonderful reading week. Once again, thank you so very much for watching.